Ho, ho, ho. Welcome back to the Cruise Diaries.
The Cruise Diaries Holiday Edition.
Yes, we decided that we were going to take one episode to talk about the holidays, talk about what we do, some of our traditions. How does JJ Cruise do December?
Yes, all of our best stories and some of our worst stories, some that are a little more tragic and scary, but also some that are just purely hilarious, as well as what are some of our best gifts growing up? What do we remember still to this day as a best gift? And what are some of our traditions that we have celebrated in the past? And what are some to come in the future?
I think that the best gifts one is a good one to start with, because that's kind of like the popcorn question. So it's like, what was the best Christmas gift you ever received? And mine is so funny. Like, I just think back to what it was, and I think it's hilarious. But as an adult, there's parts of it that do make sense in my mind now.
I can't wait to hear why.
But I don't know. I also just today, we are in the holiday spirit here because Jared and I, we're always gone at families for Christmas Day. And so we actually just had our Christmas this morning.
Yes. In fact, I am drinking a glass of champagne while we do this because Jordan woke me up with a bottle popped of champagne. And yes, I am calling it the correct name because this is an actual bottle of champagne.
Yes, no Prosecco here today.
No
We're drinking the real stuff.
This is actually coming from champagne, and it's delicious. So he woke me up with 2 glasses. We had a cheers and some brunch. But let's get into the best gifts here as I sip on my champagne. What's yours?
Okay, so this is so funny, but I still remember the day that I opened this gift. And this is what's so funny, because as kids, it's like the dollar price point does not always matter, because I know that this gift was not an expensive gift, even though I have great appreciation for it. The best gift that I ever received was the VHS version of George of the Jungle starring Brendan Fraser.
So many people have so many questions right now. Why did you love George of the Jungle so much?
I don't know what it was about the movie. And now I'm thinking I need to go back and rewatch that movie. We should rewatch it together. I'm sure it's on some streaming platform, but I don't know if it was the fact that it was like the inner gayness inside of me, just like having this appreciation for like a mostly naked Brendan Fraser, or if it was, I loved the story. I thought that it was so funny. Like, there's some really funny moments in that movie that I look back on and still kind of make me giggle, just because it's a good movie. It's a solid movie from the 90s.
It is a fantastic movie. Perfect family film, right? Like, you have some humor for the kids. You have some humor for the adults. I get it. Have
you even seen it?
I have. Oh, I had it on VHS as well. Trust, I have seen George of the Jungle many a times myself. I would never say it was one of my best gifts, but I did love it. And yeah, it's like the grown up version of, Tarzan in a way, right? Like, Tarzan's the animated. Now you actually have a real person being, somewhat like a Tarzan.
I remember 8-year-old me doing the George of the Jungle, like beating his chest and doing the doing that when I open it up at the top of my lungs. I just loved it. So what about you? What was your best gift ever?
So it's hard to say best gift ever, right? Because there's been so many amazing gifts, and our memories don't always serve us well forever, right? Like, you always think of some of them that are just more particular than others, even if it wasn't the best. So I'm going to say this is one of my better gifts. But as a kid, I was this skinny. I actually looked like Mowgli from the Jungle Book. That's what I literally looked like growing up. You did.
I can vouch for that. I've seen a lot of pictures.
I had the dark hair bowl cut just like Mowgli did. I was skinny, but little tall and lanky. And so I got one Christmas this kid-size real life van, like kid-size van. It was red on the bottom, yellow on top. Let me know if you...
What is kid size? Can you
kid size meaning I could get in and drive it myself. It was not electric. There's no motors attached, but it had a steering wheel. You got in and it had a seat. It had a door. If I remember, it had a door. It's either a door or I had to climb into it. But anyways, it was literally like I could drive my own minivan all around my basement, all around outside on the driveway, wherever I wanted to. Now, this was not like one of those higher end ones now that's like an actual car, where it's got a motor, an engine. No, This was all manual where you had to have your feet and you had to actually like pedal yourself with your feet to go anywhere. But it felt so cool. And I have so many pictures in this van
This
now.
is so ironic to me because you hate driving.
And that's the thing. I think growing up, I was one of the kids that had a minivan growing up. I remember minivans. That was what I was used to driving to school, whether it be in my own family's minivan or another family's minivan. Those were like the hot thing. A Dodge Caravan was like the hot thing of the 90s.
Yeah, we had a Dodge Caravan as well.
Right?
Yes.
I feel like you rarely see them now, but that was the hot thing. And so I wanted something just like my mom and dad had. And that's why that was it.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Once again, probably not the best gift ever, but if we're going kid size, that's probably one of the better
No,
gifts.
and you know what's really funny is I'm actually remembering when I was in college, my big Christmas gift was this massive trip to Disney World on a cruise and then to Universal Studios. We were gone for like 2 weeks. And now I'm thinking like, that was actually a pretty amazing gift. And when you like compare a gift like that to a George of the Jungle on VHS, maybe the cruise at this point, I should probably say that was a better gift.
Right. That's exactly why I had to say it. I mean, literally, there's been how many gifts you've given me, how many gifts I've gotten as an adult that are incredible gifts. But I feel like it's more fun to just talk about the kid gifts.
So let's transition into some holiday traditions. This is what's so funny and kind of fun, is we both grew up with Christmas Eve holiday traditions revolving around food, which
yes.
I know that the holidays for everyone revolves around food. And also, just so you know, if you don't celebrate Christmas and you celebrate something else like Hanukkah, we're getting there because we've got some stories about Hanukkah as well. But Christmas Eve. So my family, we would, and I love this. I look back at and just with so many fond memories of this. And we've actually stopped doing this. And I think it's because now we're all grown and out of the house and everyone is kind of not in one place on Christmas Eve. But we would always make we would make homemade pizza and my mom would shape the crust into Christmas trees and we would call it decorating the Christmas tree. We would get to make our own Christmas tree, put whatever toppings we want on to make it look colorful and make it look beautiful. And I just loved that. The pizza always tasted better on Christmas Eve, even though it was the same recipe that she would use for homemade pizza the rest of the year. It was just such a fun tradition of decorating those pizza Christmas trees. And I loved gathering around the table with my family and eating that. And you had a couple of food Christmas traditions, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I've experienced the Christmas tree pizzas as well.
We have done it, yes.
And it is better.
Yeah.
On Christmas Eve, it's just better.
It is.
And I did have the best pizza one year. I'm not going to lie. It was the best pizza. Everyone wanted it.
Best decorated.
Oh, yeah. Best decorated, the right ingredients, the right portion size, because everyone does it a little differently.
No, it is kind of like a want tradition if you just like cheese pizza, because it's just like, okay, well... It's just a, naked Christmas tree. But sorry, let's get over to what your family did for food.
No, completely. I mean, for my Christmas Eve tradition with my family, on one side of the family, which was the Nebraska Ranchers. If you ever hear of me being a steak snob, this is where it's going back to.
Oh, he's a steak snob.
Because my grandparents are ranchers. They've raised cattle their whole life. They are now retired, but still have cattle on their property. But one thing we always do on Christmas Eve is we'd have a Christmas Eve dinner, and it was two different soups. One would be chili, and the other one would be an oyster stew. I don't know where that came from, but it is now tradition to have oyster stew and chili. And my mom goes and has one small bowl of each. I have an uncle that loves to put as much chili powder and hot sauce in his chili as possible. So I always think of that and try to put mine as hot as it could be as well. Just such good memories of something so simple, right? Like just unique enough to where you're like, this is just us. This is no one else. This is just us out there.
I do wonder where that tradition started. Like,
Yeah.
do you have any idea?
No, I mean, I know my grandpa loves oysters, and I know he doesn't get it at all because he's in the middle of the only thing he comes across is Rocky Mountain oysters, which are a whole nother thing.
Those are not finding their way onto anybody's Christmas plates this year.
I don't think, definitely not in a stew. Although they can be delicious, not to knock them. But what I think it just comes from historical, like I think his grandpa or his dad loved oysters as well, or oyster stew, and it's the one time a year that he could get them.
Interesting. And you also did something really fun for Christmas too, right? For Christmas Day.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that I want to bring into our traditions once we have our growing our own family one day, is my Mexican side of my family, my grandma's side. She is no longer living, but when she was alive, she would have prepared the most amazing feast for us. And it was all Mexican dishes, from menudo, which is my favorite Mexican soup. It has tripe and some other great things that you don't find every day in the U.S.
It's an acquired taste, I think.
It's an acquired taste, but more people love it when they try it than don't. And then also like fresh tacos that she had literally made with fresh shredded cheese, fresh tortillas that she just made from masa, or maybe bought from the store that was the Mexican store in town. Usually everything was fresh, shredded lettuce. She just shredded right there in the sink where she washed it, and then she'd shred it into a bowl. I mean, she literally did everything by hand and with so much love, and it tasted so delicious.
This is a tradition that I can definitely get behind. If you know me in any capacity, you know that I love Mexican food. And I did not marry Jared for his Mexican heritage. However, it really, really worked out for me. I feel like I won the lottery when it comes to that, because this man can make tacos like nobody. Yeah, the loteria. I feel like I mean, obviously I have the best spouse in the world, but the fact that he's Mexican and knows how to make tacos.
Yes.
That's like speaks to my soul. Listen, some people have chicken soup for the soul. I've got homemade tacos for the soul.
He's almost said homemade taquerias.
I know. I almost said homemade tacos.
I mean, hey, there you go.
Anyways, we digress. So,
I mean, I think I just want to add here, food is one tradition, but I would say there's other traditions that we just share with each other as well. And from my side, we always had watch Christmas movies over the holidays. So the month of December, like you said, it's not just necessarily the day or a specific holiday, but just the whole holiday season. Being able to watch Christmas movies and Christmas TV shows, starting it off with Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade for Thanksgiving.
Oh, yes, you do. You do have to always watch that.
But I know that you have so many things that you do with your family or have done with your family as well, all the way back with your grandma.
Yep.
And so there's just so much rich history there.
So speaking of my grandmother, and she is also no longer with us. She was truly, truly the most amazing grandma in the world. She grew up and had, well, I'm going to say now, an appreciation for Jewish culture and tradition. And that was because as we grew up, she had told us that she was Jewish, and therefore my mother was Jewish and I was Jewish. And so we would celebrate things like Passover. We never really celebrated Hanukkah, but I always had this interest in celebrating it because of her and her no longer being with us. And the story is kind of funny. We were in New York City. This was probably maybe 2 years after we started dating.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe 1 or 2 years after we started dating. And in New York, there was, if you've ever been to New York City during the holiday times, there are trucks that are parked sporadically throughout the city. And there are little Jewish boys that are kind of running around asking different people on the street if they're Jewish. And because I had never celebrated Hanukkah before, and because my grandmother was gone and I wasn't really practicing, these two little boys came up to me and Jared, and they said, and like they looked at me. They didn't look at Jared. They were like, "Are you Jewish?" And I was, gosh, I feel so bad. I thought they were asking for money, and I just said no, and I kept walking. And Jared made me feel really, really bad about saying no. He was like, "Why would you say that to them?" And I was like, I don't know. I feel guilty for saying that too. And so we crossed the street, and there was another truck and two other little Jewish boys that ran up to me, and they were like, "Excuse me, sir, are you Jewish?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, you look Jewish, so we thought that you were." And then they looked at you.
Yeah, they're like, "We knew you weren't Jewish." but you can have one as well.
So they came over and they were giving out donuts as well as menorahs, which was like so nice. They gave Jared a donut and they were really nice about that. The ironic part to this story is, per 23andMe, after my grandmother was gone, none of us are Jewish. Like in terms of like our bloodline or, you know, our even our heritage. And we found out that she just had a great appreciation for Judaism, even though she really wasn't a practicing Jew. She did not convert to Judaism, and she was not Jewish by blood either. So we kind of all left with like that. We found that out as a family, and we left that conversation with like my aunts and uncles and my parents. And we were all like, okay, well, this is interesting.
I think the big thing here to note is the grandma we were talking about is the true matriarch of the family.
She is the true matriarch of the family.
The center of the family. And I truly believe that she could have actually believed even that she was Jewish. There could be, similar to you, family history of someone saying that they were, and she really thinking, like, we don't know.
Yeah.
You know, we couldn't ask her. She's no longer with us. But she didn't do it as a prank. She didn't do it anything like that.
Oh,
it was
no.
all out of sincerity. And I just love the fact that we literally were crossing every street and would be stopped by another Jewish boy who was just wanting to like celebrate with another Jewish man the rich history. And Jordan at first was just like so like worried that they're gonna like ask him something he didn't know, or like just didn't know, because, you know, he wasn't someone that practiced Judaism or anything like that. But he also celebrated the fact that he thought he was Jewish.
Yeah, I mean, and again, Passover was like a really important period of my life. I have so many memories with that. So typically we do light a menorah in this house for Hanukkah. I still have that menorah that those little boys gave me, and I think fondly of my grandmother when we do that. But also we love different cultures and traditions and heritages, and so I love doing that. I love having a menorah in our house and lighting it for Hanukkah. It's something that has become an important part of our holiday season.
So that was one of our funnier stories around the holiday season in New York City, but we haven't only had fun or funny stories. You know, the holidays is full of stress, it's full of excitement, but also sometimes cold and problems and sickness. And we've had some scary incidents as well. Why don't we start with the one just a few years ago? It might have even been last year.
Yeah, I think it was a couple of years ago, but it was really, really, a really wild story. So we were at my parents. My parents live about a 2-hour drive from where we live in Indiana. And we'll go there and typically celebrate Christmas at some point during December. But this particular year, we were at their house on Christmas Day. Actually, this was 3 years ago, I'm remembering.
3 years, yeah.
Yeah, so we were at their house on Christmas Day.
3 years ago, yeah.
And there was a blizzard outside.
And so when this happened, we were actually driving home that night. It wasn't, we had spent the whole week or weekend beforehand, and we had to get back. I don't remember if it was for a job, if it was for a cruise, for whatever it was. We had to get back home. So we came home later that night. It was dark out, and it was freshly snowed. There was some icier roads, but not too icy, you know, definitely reasonable. And for those that drive in the Midwest, we know how to deal with the ice.
So we live on a stretch of road that takes you directly into our town. And we live probably about just a half a mile from the downtown area of our city. And this road that we live on, you can see down the road forever. So we turn onto our main road, and I can see way, way far in the distance through the snow, through like the blizzard that was happening, lights. I could see a fire truck. I could see cop cars. I don't remember if there was an ambulance there, but just like you're coming, it looked like a movie. Like you're coming into the scene of some type of like really bad tragedy. And we're driving, and I'm like, wow, there must have been a really bad accident up there.
And I'm like, I am so glad that's not at our house.
Yes, you literally said, you're like, thank goodness that's not at our house, or like it has nothing to do with our house. And we're driving closer and closer and closer. And I'm like, Jared, oh my gosh, that's our house.
We get there and we notice a huge pickup truck is in our front yard. And at the moment that we drive up, we cannot see if it's hit our house or not.
Yeah. And we were like, oh my gosh, this pickup truck clearly spun out of control, must have been going too fast. We have a huge tree in our front yard. And we couldn't tell if the pickup truck had possibly hit the tree or had hit our front room. And I mean, we both kind of go into panic mode as we're like pulling up, because all we can see is the truck. We can't see we can see the front half of the truck. We can't see the back half of the truck where it is, because it's surrounded with police cars and police kind of directing traffic. And we like pull up and the police are like, keep moving. And we're like, this is our house. And he's like, oh, okay, go get in your garage. And as we turn the corner, we can see the truck is maybe 8 to 12 inches away from the front of our house.
Which was thankfully due to the weather that might have also caused the accident. We had snow, so much snow that I had to get out and Jordan had to get out, and we both had to start shoveling because there's so much snow in the driveway that we had to shovel our driveway clean before getting into our garage. But that also meant that there was plenty of snow that might have slowed down this truck from actually hitting our house. I mean, we all know a snowbank can do a lot. And even though this was fresher snow, it might have had enough give to where it just didn't allow the truck to go those few inches further to hit our house.
Yeah. And thankfully there was no damage, because the cop, we got out and we talked to the cop for a while. Super, super nice. And again, this was Christmas Day. So it was like, this stinks that like all of these emergency workers are having to deal with this. But I know if you work in that field, you never get a day off, because you have to respond to whatever's going on. The cop was like, we're really thankful that it didn't hit your house, or that it didn't, do a lot of damage, because the guy doesn't have a driver's license and there's no license plate on this truck. And I was like, I'm having this like moment where I'm getting a little bit triggered to 5 years prior to that, when we had gotten in an accident in Chicago that was not our fault at all. But it was basically a very similar situation. A guy without a driver's license that did not own a car, and there was no like plate on the car, and he actually ran from the scene. We ended up catching him. That was like a whole mess. And so I am to this day so thankful for the Christmas miracle that truck did not hit our house.
Oh, absolutely. That wasn't the only Christmas that was a little scary, though. That one, of course, ended up for the best, and was handled pretty quickly, right? That scare was probably only a couple minutes long until we saw that it didn't hit our house. But the other one was maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Of a scare.
So one of the more somber Christmases, I mean, for my family, we would say this is probably the worst Christmas we've ever experienced, was the year that I had a sibling in the hospital over Christmas and New Year's. So my brother Landon, all of us kids have asthma, but he somehow had asthma the worst growing up. And this was probably in 2004, 2005. I would have been in high school. He had a really bad spout of asthma that took a turn into pneumonia, and my parents had to take him to the doctor, and the doctor was like, we got to admit him to the hospital. So then took him to the hospital. That was like probably around December 19th or 20th. Well, he just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And mind you, he was probably in second grade at this time. So he was young. He was a kid. On Christmas Day, they had to admit him to the ICU, and the doctor had to have a conversation with my parents about whether he was going to make it out of the hospital or not. And that was just the worst, one of the worst days, I think, of our lives. Me and the rest of the siblings were with my grandparents. It was such a sad Christmas, because I just remember begging God to save my brother, to let him come home. And for 3 or 4 days, we just didn't know what would happen. My parents didn't leave the hospital the entire time. When he finally did get to come home right after New Year's, which was like the best day, that was like a late Christmas gift. I will never forget that we sat as a family in our basement and we watched movies for almost 36 hours. Nobody went to bed. I mean, we would sleep on the couch and wake up, and we stayed together. And my parents said, I don't want any of us to go anywhere for the next couple of days. And we're just going to sit and be together as a family. And I will always remember that moment in my mind as being this pivotal moment about how much family matters, because we didn't know if we were going to have our entire family prior to that week. And I think that we were all just so thankful that we did.
I actually recall a story, not the exact same, but similarly, if anyone remembers, I think it was in the late 90s or mid 90s, where there was a huge snowstorm. And this was not on Christmas, but it was over the holiday season, if I remember right. And it was took out all of the power lines in Omaha, Nebraska, where I was living at the time. And it left everybody without power. Now, we had a fireplace at our home, and we knew that this storm could do that kind of damage. So we did have some extra logs. We had blankets and flashlights. And I remember having a Hot Wheel set that I was playing with, but that it was just with the open fire. We were completely bundled up with layers of clothes, had blankets on us and everything. And everyone was dealing with this at the same time. And it was just me, my mom, my dad, and a fireplace, lots of blankets. And what really helped us is that we were able to talk to some friends whose power didn't go out, or whose power, they had a generator. And we were able to stay with them a few nights while it was out. And I just remembered those kind of memories that should be traumatizing are sometimes more filled with love because of the loved ones that are around you. I mean, I remember that it being almost kind of cozy and special, even though I'm sure my parents were freaking out and thinking, what if the power never comes back on? You know, like there's an ice storm. It's horrible outside. What if we're not able to get to our friends? Like they probably had all of these fears of just protecting their family. And as a kid, all I can remember is just, you know, being snuggled up and being a little bit cold, but at the same time having my Hot Wheels set that I was playing with by a fire, and then having kind of a holiday sleepover at a family friend's house, and they had a couple kids as well. But so amazing that like love can kind of conquer some of those things of fear or of trauma because you just remember the love that you had during that time.
It's so true. And it really, really puts in perspective what gifts matter and how much people matter. And I say that because that year that like my family spent all those hours watching TV and just movies and being together, I don't remember anything that year about gifts. I don't remember one thing that I unwrapped. I do remember that we unwrapped gifts much later after Christmas, but I don't really remember what we got. That whole illness for my brother lasted another 4 weeks. He had to be on oxygen. I mean, it was like this little 7-year-old with oxygen tubes, you know, attached up into his nostrils. And we were just so thankful that he was with us. So those are the moments that you realize that make you grow up, I think, and make you realize that like holidays are only special when you're able to create memories with the people that you love and that you care about and that you can spend time with. And that's really the true like meaning for the season.
Yeah. The love you share with others can be seen way more past gifts and money. It's more about spending time with them, creating those memories, even if they are initially bad memories, to make them into bright memories because of the love that you shared in those times.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm still happy that I got the George of the Jungle VHS tape at some point.
Oh, and I love that minivan.
But I hope that you've enjoyed sitting and listening to some of our favorite holiday moments. I know that Christmas is upon us. Hanukkah has just ended. Whatever you are celebrating, I hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your holiday season. We go into the new year right after that. And then we get to celebrate our 5-year wedding anniversary right after that. So we're going to be in the mode of celebrating for the next several weeks.
We're so excited to bring a lot more cruise content coming soon as well. But thank you so much for joining us on this holiday edition of the Cruise Diaries.
Yes, again, I'm Jordan.
And I'm Jared.
And until next time, see ya.